The storm rolled in just after dusk. Reverend Thomas Wren, lantern in hand, trudged through the gravel path toward the ruins of Gloamhaven Abbey, an ancient, skeletal silhouette on the moor, abandoned for 2 centuries and cursed for at least as long. He had not come by choice. He had come by summons. The letter had arrived without postmark or return, sealed with black wax and inscribed in calligraphy that seemed to tremble on the parchment. Come to the Abbey. The bell has rung. The Hollow Saint wakes. He dismissed it as nonsense, of course. Another village superstition born of rain and rot. But then the bell did ring. Once. Long past midnight, when no bell had swung in Gloamhaven for over 180 years. No mechanism remained. No rope. No clapper. The tower had collapsed decades ago. And yet they had all heard it, Wren, the townsfolk, even the deaf groundskeeper old Merely, who wept at its sound. So now, lantern swaying, boots soaked, Wren stood before the crumbling facade of the abbey, its archways black and toothless, ivy choking its bones like veins. Something was watching from the broken rose window. He felt it. Not a person but a presence. Cold. Familiar. He stepped inside. The nave was a ruin, columns snapped like chalk, pews rotted and warped, stained glass shattered into bleeding mosaics. Rain leaked through the vaulted ceiling like tears from a forgotten god. But the bell had rung from here. And someone or something had lit candles. Rows of them, guttering in the windless dark, lined the altar and the collapsed choir stalls. Their flames danced without movement. In the center of the chancel sat a single figure. A girl dressed in funeral white. Her back was to him. Her hands folded. Her head bowed as though in prayer. Reverend Wren approached slowly. "Child," he said softly. "You shouldn't be here. This place is dangerous." She did not move. He stepped closer. "Are you hurt? Lost? Speak." The girl lifted her head slightly, revealing a patch of scalp where her hair had been burned away. Her skin was pale, translucent in the candlelight, and her neck bore a black rosary that pulsed like a heartbeat. She whispered. Not to him. To something else. "He comes. He remembers." Wren's mouth went dry. Who comes?" The girl turned. Her eyes were hollow. Not blind, empty. A voice, not hers, issued from her throat. Male. Echoing. "You know me, Thomas Wren. You buried me once." He staggered back, breath caught in his throat. His mind reeled, searching for reason, for memory. He had never been here before. He had never. A flash of vision. A stone altar, a body wrapped in wet cloth, buried beneath black loam and incense smoke. A hand twitching in the grave. His own. He fled. The moor swallowed him whole, the wind keening like a widow. The rain had turned to sleet. He ran blindly, no longer a priest but a child, fleeing not from a ghost but from truth. He collapsed near the cemetery gates. When he woke, dawn had broken. The abbey stood silent once more. But the girl was gone. Back in the vicarage, he tore through his parish records, searching for anything. Names, dates, burial rites. Nothing matched. No hollow saint was ever recorded. No mention of the bells ringing in any local history. A single, brittle page fell from the back of an old ledger. Handwritten in charcoal. In the 12th year of the plague, the monks of Gloamhaven entombed the abbot beneath the altar, for he would not die. His eyes gone, his tongue burned, but still he preached. They called him the Hollow Saint. They rang the bell to seal him in. There was more. He promised he would wake when the world forgot him. When the last descendant passed and no one bore his name. Wren stared at the name scribbled in the margin. Abbot Elias Wren. The ink turned to ash in his hands. That night the bell rang twice. And this time the sound was not heard through ears, but bones. The second toll of the bell did not echo through the town. It pierced it. Windows shuddered. Dogs howled. And those old enough to remember the last war felt it in the marrow of their skulls, as if someone had hammered a rusted nail through a century of sleep. Thomas Wren woke screaming. The parish chapel clock read 3:03 a.m. The sound still echoed, not in the air but in his bones. He could feel it ringing through his ribcage like a second heartbeat. A deeper one. Older. By dawn, 3 townsfolk had gone missing. One was the blind bell ringer, Merely. The others, children. All of them had visited the abbey ruins the day before. The townspeople whispered of curses, of the hollow saint, of judgment. Some came to Wren's door, crossing themselves in fear. Others stayed away entirely. But one old woman knocked with certainty. Mrs. Finch. Her hair was long and gray, braided with dried rosemary. Her hands were stained with wax. And her eyes, milky and pale, looked straight through him. "You opened it, didn't you?" she said. Wren blinked. "Opened what?" "The tomb. Or your blood did." She entered without waiting for welcome and set an old book on his table. Its cover was bound in animal hide, etched with the symbol of a crucifix wrapped in thorns. "The Liber Cinerum," she said. "The Book of Ashes. Written by Brother Callan, last monk of Gloamhaven. He buried the saint. And left behind the rites." Wren stared at the pages. Latin, English, and something else. Fragments of a language no human tongue should know. Symbols that shimmered when he didn't look directly at them. He flipped to a page marked with dried blood. "The saint does not die. He empties himself to become vessel. In hunger he waits. The bell calls him, but only blood opens the door. Only the air awakens him." Wren's hands trembled. "I'm not an heir. I've never." Mrs. Finch placed something cold into his palm. A silver ring, tarnished black. Its crest bore the same symbol from the book. "I found it in the hollow under your vicarage when I was a girl," she whispered. "You were barely born." Screaming louder than thunder on the morning after the third bell. She leaned closer. "You were always his." Wren returned to the abbey that night. Rain had turned the moor into a sea of mud, and the wind carried voices not quite spoken. The abbey's silhouette rose like a shipwreck in moonlight, its bell tower still shattered, yet somehow more present than before. He crossed the nave with slow, reverent steps. Candles burned again. The girl in white stood before the altar, no longer still. She was moving, digging. The floor had been cracked open. Beneath the stone, earth. And beneath that, a stairwell. Her hands were slick with blood. She smiled when she saw him. "He is hungry," she said. Wren descended. The stair wound downward, spiraling into the earth like a corkscrew. The walls bled with moss. Roots clawed through the stone, reaching like fingers. The air grew colder with each step, thick with incense and rot. At the bottom, a black door. Wood, but not of any tree Wren had ever known. Fused with bone. Bound by chains made of human jawbones, each one engraved with the same symbol as his ring. He touched it. The door opened inward without a sound. And inside, a tomb. But not a tomb for one. Rows of stone biers lined the chamber. Monks, their faces covered in veils soaked with wax and time, lay silent in eternal vigil. In the center, elevated on an altar of obsidian, was him. The hollow saint. What remained of him? The words were not spoken. They were remembered. Wren stood. "No," he said aloud. "I'm not your vessel." The air shifted. The hollow saint sat up. Above, the bell tolled for the third time. And this time it did not stop. The bell rang without rhythm. It tolled not from above, but from beneath, shaking the earth like a deep, subterranean scream. Each note sent vibrations through the abbey's crypts, dislodging dust, bones, and something far worse. Reverend Wren staggered back from the altar as the hollow saint rose. The saint's movements were not natural. His limbs did not bend, they pivoted, like a marionette suspended on invisible threads. His face, still eyeless and smooth, turned toward Wren as if seeing him with perfect clarity. And then he smiled, though he had no lips. Behind him, the monks began to stir. The dead rose in silence, veiled heads turning in unison. Their robes hung like burial shrouds, brittle with age and soot. Some still clutched wax candles, burned down to bone. Others began to hum. Discordant. Like wind through broken flutes. Wren backed away, heart thundering. "What are you?" he gasped. "Why me?" The hollow saint did not speak aloud. He raised one hand and Wren saw the ring on his own finger pulse with black fire. "You are the final seal. The last of the bloodline. Born to complete the circle." The bell tolled again. And with it the choir sang. The sound was unbearable. It wasn't music. It was a memory, sung through mouths that had long since forgotten how to pray. A chant in a language older than Latin, older than scripture, closer to binding than worship. Wren fell to his knees as blood poured from his ears. He could feel the hymn changing him. stretching his thoughts into foreign shapes, rewriting his past. Visions crashed over him. A boy hiding in the abbey's walls, watching as monks sealed their abbot alive in the tomb. The same boy, now old, carving a sigil into a newborn's forehead. The baby, screaming. His name whispered, Thomas. No, Ren choked. That's not me. It is. You were born not of flesh but of right. You were never meant to live a full life, only to be a vessel. A gate. The hollow saint stepped down from the altar. The monks reached toward Ren. But something inside him snapped. Not in fear but in memory. He remembered the old woman. Mrs. Finch. The Book of Ashes. The page torn at the edge. The gate may yet be closed if the vessel breaks itself before being opened. A loophole. A final resistance. But it had to be done before the fourth toll. He turned and ran. The crypt walls screamed. The monks followed, singing louder. Bones spilled from alcoves. Roots lashed from the ceiling like serpents. Ren sprinted up the winding stair, lungs afire. He burst from the altar tunnel and into the nave. And froze. The abbey was alive. Its ruined windows shone with stained glass that had not existed for centuries. Candles lit themselves along the pews. A congregation of waxen figures sat in silence, eyeless, faceless, yet focused. The girl in white stood at the pulpit. She was older now, no longer a child. Her dress had turned crimson at the hem. Her eyes bled tears that ran like ink. She smiled at him. You're almost ready, she said. The fourth bell was coming. Ren knew it. Felt it. The sky outside had gone black as pitch. Lightning forked across the stained glass. And in the rafters crows circled like vultures. He stumbled to the sacristy. Smashed open the old chest beneath the rotted vestments. Inside, salt. Wool. An ancient sacramental dagger, its blade engraved with the Ashcroft seal. His family's true sigil reclaimed. He didn't remember placing it there. But then he didn't remember being born either. He took the blade. As he turned to leave, the girl blocked the door. You don't have to die, she said softly. Ren raised the dagger. You're not real. Her smile vanished. She blinked once. And her mouth opened too wide. From within a voice spoke. No death. Only exchange. Let go your will. Become the voice. Become the bell. The fourth toll began. Ren screamed and plunged the blade into his own chest. Light exploded outward. The abbey screamed. And the bell cracked. The bone choir stopped. The monks collapsed, bones spilling like sand. The hollow saint shrieked, not in pain but in fear. His hand turned to ash. His face split. And then, he was gone. Ren awoke in the moor grass. The abbey was gone. Not ruined, vanished. Only its foundation remained, moss-covered and forgotten. The sun was rising. The bell was silent. And in his hand the dagger was now whole and gleaming. Inscribed with one final phrase. He who breaks the vessel seals the gate. But later that year, during the harvest moon, a child was born in the village with no shadow. And in the deepest part of the forest, a wind began to hum. The song was faint, but it sounded like a bell. 10 years passed. No one spoke of Gloamhaven Abbey anymore. The moor grew over its remains. Stones were repurposed by farmers who claimed they'd always been there. Even the shape of the land changed, as if something deep beneath had shifted in its sleep and turned over once more. But Thomas Wren remembered everything. He lived now in the old Finch cottage on the edge of town. A recluse. A gardener. A man with no official past. To the children he was the crow priest. The man who never entered the church, who left herbs and salt bundles on doorsteps, and who kept mirrors turned toward the wall. He no longer aged. Not visibly. His hair remained iron gray. His hands were steady. But his eyes carried a depth that made even the fiercest dogs whimper. At night he dreamed of bells. And sometimes, just sometimes, he heard them while awake. One evening, as frost curled over the window panes, Wren heard a knock at the door. He opened it without hesitation. A boy stood there. No older than 10. Barefoot. His eyes glowed faintly, not with light but with reflection. Like two mirrors facing each other. He didn't speak. He simply raised his hand and offered Wren something small, wrapped in cloth. Wren opened it. A shard of black metal. Bell forged. The boy's lips parted. The saint is gone, he said. But the house remains. Wren blinked. What house? The boy turned. He walked toward the treeline, toward the path that hadn't existed the night before. Wren followed. They walked through thickets and fog, past standing stones inscribed with no known language. The air grew heavy with silence, not absence of sound but resistance to it. A silence so thick it felt conscious. At the path's end stood a structure. Small, crooked, made of the same stone as the abbey, yet it was not a ruin. It was whole. A cottage shaped like a chapel with no windows and no door. Just walls. And a roof. And a cold chimney that never smoked. The boy pointed to it. He sleeps there now. Between time. But he's not alone. Wren felt his pulse slow. Who else? The boy smiled. You. The boy vanished. And Wren was alone. He circled the house again and again. No entry. No seams. No lock to pick or door to open. And yet, he felt the pull. He pressed his hand to the wall. Stone turned soft like flesh. It inhaled. Inside was not a room. It was a memory. The abbey, pristine, golden, filled with 1,000 candles and a choir of faceless monks. The air was rich with myrrh. The stained glass shone with light from no sun. And on the altar, himself, Thomas Wren dressed in white. Not old. Not young. Frozen. Deep. Watching from the center of the room was the hollow saint, whole now, human-shaped. Clothed in the skin of memory, the voice of fire. But his face was Wren's. The saint smiled. All things return to source. You are not the air. You are the echo. Wren knelt. Not in submission but in choice. I ended you once. No, said the saint. You ended the bell. Not the sound. Sound lingers. A beat passed. Then, would you become silence? Wren stood. He stepped forward and merged into the version of himself on the altar. And the world went still. Outside the house shuddered. Cracks split its walls. Moss grew backward into stone. The sky turned from night to something darker. A black sun rose over the moor. In the village, children no longer dreamed. They heard music instead, soft, distant, like a lullaby played on glass and wind. And once a year on the longest night the black bell rings once. Not loud. But enough. Enough to remind the world that the hollow saint never left. He only changed form. He became place. And far across the moor the house with no door waits. For someone to knock.